Okay, it's 11 o'clock, guys, so I'm going to kick off, if that's okay. Can I just respectfully ask that everyone just mutes themselves for now, just because the camera kind of flicks, if that's all right. And if you have any questions, would you mind just putting them in the little chat room, and I'll keep an eye on that, if that's all right. So it would be good actually if you had any questions, just to, this is a great opportunity that we have Ally here. So please do feel free to ask whatever questions. We'll try and get to them if we can. We've got a lot of questions already. So you will keep seeing me refer to my little cheat sheet here with all the questions on it. So I will keep referring to that. But we are absolutely thrilled and delighted to have the wonderful Ally Dombey with us today. I'm sure Ally really doesn't need an awful lot of introduction, but just in case anyone doesn't know her, which I'd be surprised, but just in case, Ally is the co-founder of Revenue by Design and specialises in creating and managing profit optimising revenue management strategies. They're designed to unleash trapped profitability in hotels, reduce the cost of sale, through smart third-party management. So Ally manages a team of revenue managers who provide revenue outsource services for hotels, building and implementing revenue strategies for independent hotels across the UK and internationally. Ally designs and delivers training courses and runs a certified qualification for revenue managers. And I am going to ask Ally to talk to you a little bit further at the end to tell you a little bit more about her revenue management courses. But personally, on a personal level, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Ally here. I've known Ally for a long time, and her skill set and what Ally does, speaking at events, running probably the best revenue management conference in Europe, if not the world. So I aspire to Ally and everything that she's achieved. So we're really, really lucky that we have Ally with us today. So for everyone, sorry, just joining, if I could ask you just to keep yourselves on mute and put any questions that you have in the chat box, and I'll try and get to them. But without further ado, the lovely Ally, thank you for joining us today.
A pleasure. I feel like there's an awful long way to fall now after that wonderful introduction, so thank you very much.
Not at all. Actually, I just spoke to one of the girls in the team this morning and asked her, how far does my laptop need to be away to stop showing my wrinkles? And the answer was another village. So I am apologising in advance. So Ally, honestly, it's so lovely to have you, and I would really like you to tell everyone a little bit about Revenue by Design as we go through this, but please excuse me, I'm going to keep referring to this, but we have been gathering questions from the audience. Thank you to everyone who actually did ask some questions, and we are going to look at, I suppose, what all the questions that we had sort of focused around, if I'm honest, rate strategy for 2021, how on earth do we manage tour operators, and what are we going to do, and do we have an opportunity to manage the OTAs a little bit better? Now, I'll be honest with you, I think we could probably talk about those all day. Those three great topics. But we'd like this to be, as I said, fun, engaging. Hopefully, well, I know that you will learn a lot from Ally today. But I suppose my first question, Ally, is, we are very keen to have our hotels open, and certainly here in south of Ireland, we have a date now, which is great, which is the 20th of July that we're aiming for. We either have some of the key teams back in place, or we're working towards that. But what does that first revenue management meeting actually look like? What are we going to sit down and talk about? What strategies are we going to put in place? Have you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first revenue strategy meeting, I think there's going to be a lot of expectation on the part of revenue managers to provide the key data points that people are going to be looking for in the property. I think my first kind of like when I try and visualize it, I'm just interested and keen to understand who might actually be in the room. So I think the first thing to think about from the general structure that you've been used to as a revenue manager is that some of that just might not be there, certainly not in the same capacity as it was before. So where you have certain key skills, they might actually not necessarily be removed, but they might definitely be reduced in terms of what access you have to colleagues that can support you with getting some of the data points that you need from either sales, events, management, groups, etc. So that's the first question, and that that you need to be aware of. And I think and I think just on a personal level, it's important not to be too concerned about the whole scenario. I think it is going to be difficult, and understanding what the new normal looks like is always going to be difficult. But I think that you need to, I mean, all revenue managers really need to step up and really take the leadership role here in terms of what they provide the hotel with. So that's the first sort of kind of like framework, if you like. The likelihood is, and I know you and I've discussed this before, is that hotels won't be working off full inventory, or there'll certainly be some level of social distancing procedures involved. And certainly, as we can see at the moment, the huge focus that hotels have got on hygiene processes, management of as many frictionless points as possible, so touch-free, removal of high touch points, etc. Now, from the revenue management point of view, that is going to be adding cost into the equation. So, the fundamentals of revenue management, if you like, the real theory that we go back to, your pricing building blocks, it's a kind of, you need to kind of like really go back to basics and really understand how to communicate to the team what's going to be important from a new data point of view. So I would say cost of sale, you'd need to look into again. Now that's generally something that is part of the accounting team's role, is they would generally have some understanding of a cost of sale, but typically with the additional costs, you need to have an understanding of where your pricing strategy needs to start. Another thing that I've noticed just recently is the concept of a break-even analysis. Now, we do actually talking about training, we do actually train this as like a key building block in our training programs. And so many times I've had people say to me, why are we doing this? What is the relevance of understanding what the break-even point is of a property? And I think the assumption previously was always that a hotel wouldn't be open unless it had sufficient demand to be open. And it never crossed my mind, and I'm sure it hasn't crossed anybody's mind, that we would ever be in a position where the viability of an asset was totally under question through something completely out of their control. So I think you need to get into this mindset that most of the parameters that we've ever used in terms of the fundamentals of revenue management have to change. So, and again, break-even analysis, I know Hotstats have put one out recently into the public domain to have that's definitely worth having a look at. But fundamentally, that's going to give you the idea of how many rooms do I need to sell to know that this operation or this asset is going to continue to survive, which is a mad kind of question to have asked yourself 3 months ago, but is absolutely the right question to ask now, so that you know whichever direction you're steering the ship in terms of the demand that you're accepting, the demand that you maybe have an opportunity to optimize, certainly in terms of business mix, you're doing it in the right way. So those are the sort of the key data points in terms of that revenue meeting. And I think it's also introducing people to the concept of that. So you need to step up and take that role of communicating what it is you're talking about and why it's important as well. And then we've spoken, I know, about segmentation and business mix. So segmentation, I think, is going to be, well, not I think, it's going to be hugely different. So the segments that we know and love, the ones that that intuitive, intrinsic understanding of your segment pace that you have as a revenue manager, certainly if you've been in a property for a certain period of time, you'll have that kind of genuine intuitive understanding of how the property behaves in terms of its typical demand parameters. Now those are all gone. So typically if you're a corporate hotel, you won't know what level of corporate business is going to return. If you're a leisure hotel, you'll be hoping and praying on this leisure surge. Certainly in Ireland, you've got the date when you're going to be opening, which is fantastic. We don't have that specific date now, but everybody's anticipating that leisure surge. So from a leisure perspective, yes, you might well be looking at some demand that perhaps you weren't anticipating, but it doesn't mean to say that you know those new guests have booked, or you know the typical guest behaviours of who's potentially likely to book you. So I think so again, in terms of introducing the possibility of new segmentation to that revenue meeting is going to be critical. And then the other side about segmentation is that if you want to actually manage and track segmentation, then the requirement to have that automated is just like, I think without question now. So from my perspective, if I had to walk into a hotel and deal with a set of Excel spreadsheets, given the fact that I don't know my guests anymore, I don't know my pace analysis, I don't know how many rooms I've got to sell on an ongoing basis, the concept of just having to wrestle around with some Excel spreadsheets, because I'm going to also have to be dealing with floating availability. So it's not even as if my basic spreadsheet data is going to support me in the way that it would normally. So because one day I might be at 30% or have 30% of my rooms available for sale, the next week it might be 50, or if God forbid, if anything happens and we get a second round of virus, then we might have to go back to 30%. So you're going to be dealing with these levels of floating availability that are not necessarily going to be something that you want to do without a revenue management system. So I would have thought that certainly you're in a great position there to be a provider of one such solution. So the efficiencies, the lack of mistakes that you're going to make, everything it just points to that. So and the ability to actually obviously track those segments. Oddly, I think there's also going to be an element in that revenue meeting of, if we're talking about market segmentation, is understanding what the optimal business mix is for your property. Even though we know we haven't got a lot of demand necessarily, it's not necessarily going to be like that for a long time. And I think there's going to be lots of decisions that you need to make very quickly about new opportunities that are arriving in your pace data. Certainly clarifying exactly what that new pace is, and then adjusting to that new pace and that new demand to make sure that you're still on the ball in terms of optimizing what you can see at any one time. And that's going to be the tricky challenge, is that a lot of the conversations that you have with people in terms of who's booking the property may well not be that clear, certainly in the first few months. I can't see it being particularly clear, apart from the fact that everybody's grateful that rooms are being sold. So that's the only thing we're going to be really clear about. And I think the last thing about going into that meeting, one of the two things, firstly, budget. And I know this has been discussed before, that clearly hotels have had a budget for 2020 or the end of this year and into 2021. Those budgets obviously need to be rewritten so that a revenue manager has some kind of a target from which to basically follow. That said, I think the opportunity to look at scenario planning is probably a very healthy way of approaching how to manage the business. Scenario planning being worst case scenario, medium case scenario, best case scenario, so that everybody is in a position to understand exactly what they should be doing at any one particular point in time to support each scenario. And it may be that you move from one scenario to another, so worst case scenario, mid case, best case, if in the best type of opportunities, or looking at those opportunities. But certainly I think to have to try and stick to something which is really rigid, to try and lead the way with just one strategy is not, I don't think it's going to work. I think you just need to be super flexible. But with that, the other side of that is to not use that as an excuse to not know what you're doing. So if we're going to have scenarios, make sure they're written down, they're understood, they're processed out, everybody knows what they're going to do. Don't use a scenario as a kind of, I have no idea what I'm doing, so I'll just mention these scenarios and hope that we do okay. That's not what I mean at all. So.
Not putting your finger up here, Ally. I'm trying to
No, that's not scenario one.
No, I think you've raised some really, really fantastic points there, and I genuinely wish we had all day. to dive in, because I think this is honestly just fascinating. But I spoke to someone yesterday, and exactly that scenario planning, we were saying that no matter how difficult this is, we are going to come out of it. And what I think we have to realize is the next few months are going to be key, but they're going to be really, really difficult. But once we come out of that 3 months, then there is going to be this realignment, this readjustment of patterns, and it may not be the business. In fact, I'm 100% certain it's not going to be the business that we knew before, but I think it's going to be something different that we then just have to get used to. So it's what do we do in these sort of next 3 months? And I think that idea of scenario planning is a fantastic idea, because I think no matter what you plan for, you have to realize that the only constant thing at the moment is change. And if we plan for something, it may not work out, but at least we've got different things that we can try. But some of the other things that I think really struck me there is that changing role of revenue management. And I know this is something that you and I feel very passionately about and have spoken about a few times in the past, is that role of revenue management changing. And that role of a revenue manager kind of coming out of the dark closet, with the Excel spreadsheets and the calculator and the crystal ball and the everlasting coffee, and actually becoming a really strategic player in the management team. And that a really strong revenue manager has to have a really strong voice. And I think that role of a revenue manager changing, I think, is key, because I think we have this great time at the moment where we can bring those key members of our team together. This is such a great opportunity to try and readjust and stop that working in silos again that we talk about a lot, and bring those key members of our team back to kind of join that revenue management strategy. And I think at this moment in time, revenue management has a really strong strategic point in how we're going to drive our business forward. Do you agree with that?
Definitely. I think certainly, I think I would have thought that most sort of departments within the business are going to be looking to revenue management to have an understanding of what to do, where to go, and how to do what needs to be done. Certainly, I think the requirement for most revenue management now revenue managers now has to go into definitely having an understanding, a far greater understanding of what external impacts are going to be thrown at hotels. So, for example, governments being in management of lockdown scenarios, and then beyond that in terms of certain processes and principles about who can travel, how far they can travel. You have no idea about what might happen in terms of various restrictions being placed on people that need to travel. So not having an understanding of that, not being on top of that, and then not being able to translate that into the implications of what the revenue strategy needs to be doing is, that's not an option. So that strategic head needs to be really woken up within the revenue management environment, and certainly looking at what kind of tools are needed from each of the department heads. So from sales, marketing, from the operational team. I mean, certainly the likelihood is that you're going to be working with if you have any F&B environments, they're going to be completely different. So understanding that, and then feeding that back into the revenue strategy, and feeding back into the management team as to what are the implications of this, and what's the impact, and how are we going to substitute different business opportunities for that which we've lost. So yeah, definitely a huge opportunity for revenue managers to step up and take that leadership strategic role.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think one of the other things you said about sort of understanding that cost of sale is key. And thanks, sorry, by the way, on the plug on having a system to help, because I think genuinely, and it's not necessarily a plug for Right Revenue, but coming in, if I was going back into property, I don't think I could do my job without having some sort of system to help and that data. But understanding that cost of sale, I think, is key. And actually, just a point, I was speaking to a hotel yesterday, and the strategy that they've adopted for one of their scenarios is that every time a guest checks out, that they're going to have to leave 24 hours between each guest to really do a deep clean. And And I said, what does that deep clean look like? And I said, we don't know, we haven't worked that out yet, but we're going to have to leave 24 hours. And I think in the short term, that's okay, because occupancy isn't necessarily going to be an issue. But I think moving forward, you know, if that's something that's going to be expected of us as an industry, and I'm not saying it is, this particular hotel just has this particular scenario, I think that all of those things we have to take into consideration. But one of the other questions that was asked was, how on earth do you adopt a new rate strategy for 2021? You know, sort of, I had one hotel at the beginning of this saying that they were going to push their rate up for 2021. They were going to behave as normal and try and go for a rate increase. I think the more hotels that I speak to, and we are still speaking to hotels every day, I think a lot of them are trying to be really brave and just hold their 2020 rates and just move those into 2021. But do you think hotels are going to be that brave, Ally, or do you think there's going to be pressure from owners to discount the rate and get bums and bads and go for volume? Do you think we're going to be brave revenue managers, or do you think it's, you know, there's going to be a fundamental shift in rates downwards?
I think certainly when we first entered lockdown, there were a lot of people saying, let's not make the exit strategy an occupancy driven strategy. So that said, I don't think people were really aware of the length of lockdown, and certainly still here in the UK, where there's still not a specific date that, you know, well, although we can being given July, it's not, there's no better clarity over that as of yet. I think that certainly from what we've seen in terms of our portfolio, we've spoken to some hotels, and there have been decisions that were made when the extension of the lockdown was mentioned last week, or announced last week. Those hotels, it's become clear that those hotels that were teetering on the edge of any kind of like administration or any difficulties with liquidity, made a decision just not to reopen, and basically have either put themselves up for sale or within an ongoing sales process. So there's always, it's kind of like, you know, we've had this horrible wave of cancellations, but then actually in the bigger picture, there's also a wave of hotels that are going to have to close because they really cannot see an option to continue to trade with the extended lockdown period. So given that scenario, I think the idea from a revenue manager's perspective, I think if you've got an owner that is just desperate to get people into the hotel, it's going to be really, really, really difficult to manage that optimization without running an occupancy strategy, which de facto means that you're going to be reducing rate and trying to get whatever demand that you have. That said, I think with the communication skills that we've just spoken about, that if you can prove to an owner that given the demand that you can see, that you can optimize that demand and you can maintain rate, then I think there's a huge opportunity there to actually service the asset in the way that it needs to be done from a lovely revenue management perspective. Even so, when we think about sort of the next 3 months or moving out of lockdown and further on into 2020, certainly I can see there's a lot of anticipation regarding or pent-up demand of people who want to travel. Now, yes, that without question there is pent-up demand. I don't see that as an ongoing pent-up demand throughout the year necessarily, because I think we're also going to be stymied to a certain extent by parents that have to take their children back to school. So all of those parameters that we're hoping that would allow us to actually take advantage of that regional surge, if you like, I think are going to be a bit challenging. Firstly, if you look at some of the leisure areas that people want to go to, so Cornwall, for example, Cornwall is already 80% full for August. There's not a great deal of room anyway. So on that level, they'll probably be lucky. They might be able, well, they should be able to optimize what they've got. But there will be other regions whereby there might well be a very short period of time where we see some level of constraint. But I don't know whether we're going to get that real extended surge that we really need to actually get the industry up and running. So effectively, it's going to be like dealing with 3 winters in a row. You know, so basically last winter, you know, no, it's for real. Because once we got past like our typical high season in August, September, that's it. You're back into sort of like the winter again. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but I am seeing definitely in terms of pickup So cancellations and rebooks pick up for 2021 is huge. It's phenomenal. Now, whether or not it stays, because a lot of it's been rebooked at flexible rates, so lots of very flexible cancellation policies, which is the right thing to do at the moment. But you know, the thought of trying to keep that business in it's questionable. But that said, so 2021, I think, to answer your question, sorry, it's a bit of a long answer. Yes, I think there's opportunity, but I wouldn't be gunning for increased rates at the moment. But I think that the opportunity to be taken is to actually achieve this year's rates next year, with the possibility for, if you've had like some really good rebooks, to optimize that demand with some rate opportunity.
I think you make a really good point there, Ally, on what that demand is going to look like. And I think there's three things that I was going to ask you about, was sort of that staycation, or to, you know, what's going to happen quick, which we all believe might be staycation, what opportunities that we have short term with the OTAs, and then potentially the tour operators. But if we talk about that staycation first, we all believe, hopefully, we're correct, that this staycation is going to come back. You know, I think, you know, meeting and events, we know that's going to be sort of wiped out. Corporate business is going to be wiped out potentially, you know, for quite a prolonged period of time. I have no idea how we're going to manage weddings and dancing and all of those lovely things that happen. But that sort of staycation, you rightly say that we've got this short window with that. But how do we manage that? You know, what if you're, let's say, a hotel that's in an area where, you know, some of the attractions aren't open? Like, you know, that's going to have an impact that I think we have to be really realistic about. Kids going back to school, I think we have to be realistic about that. But one, how on earth do we stand out from the crowd if everyone is trying to grab that staycation business? And two, what if you're not a staycation type property? What if you're not geared for families? What if you're not in a location that normally attracts that kind of, you know, luxury stay couples or families? How on earth do you pick up that business? How on earth do you consider changing your segmentation to try and grab that little piece of pie? Or is it even worth doing it?
I think in terms of the encouraging people to book direct effectively, which is where we're kind of going in that sort of direction. There is a lot of work that either could have been done, should have been done, or needs to be done. It's always one of those things. But certainly in terms of getting a robust database that can be used to capture any future demand and also maintain that direct booking customer, I think back in March it would have been a good idea to start trying to build that database. So certainly in terms of just being aware of this huge flow of cancellations that were kind of come in, so capturing data from guests that were trying to rebook if there were challenges, so really making sure that all of the processes were put in place then to basically capture names and addresses, and also authority to actually communicate with them. So that would have been a good start. But so if you haven't done that, you can still do it now. But I think you know, that there will be people who'll be looking for different experiences, but to your point, very difficult if there's no leisure attractions, no pubs open, no restaurants open, or whatever, which it's only in the short term we're going to hopefully be through that. But even then, you know, there's a lot of questions over like how much of your restaurant can you open and for how long, you know, how long is this going to go on for? So it is going to be a challenge. And in my worst case scenario, I just see like people, like hotels being open with 30% occupancy and restaurants with 30%, and people just fighting over seats to get into restaurants, or getting really, really annoyed and really frustrated. So I think there needs to be a lot, so to actually sort of like circumvent that, there needs to be a lot of good messaging. So I think even if you're not in a place where people necessarily would naturally want to stay, if there's not a lot of leisure stuff open anyway, then you've probably got a fighting chance to be part of the pack. But the messaging that you put out now is critical. And I think I've seen some hotels work really well with constant messaging all the way through this. Even though they're not open, they're sharing ideas, they're sharing things to do at home, things that they do in the hotel that you could do at home, but also very, very clear messaging on hygiene, processes being put in place, safety of the guest, understanding how concerned that people are. And those messages need to be consistent. They need to be, you don't want to make it a scary visit, or you don't want to put fear into people, but there needs to be that reassurance that you are doing everything that you can to basically make that stay something that people feel confident in doing, because I think there's going to be a lot of some trials in confidence. And I think certainly in terms of city centres, London I think might suffer a lot on the leisure side. I think that a lot of people will decide to do a hub and spoke, so stay outside of London, pop in for the day and that type of thing. So I think maybe even hotels hoping for leisure in London might not get as much as they want, just because it's a city centre. They don't want to use public transport, they don't want to be around a lot of people, so you need to take into consideration those type of scenarios as well. So I don't know that there's so much about hotels that can't offer leisure. I think every hotel is a hospitality operation and should be able to offer a leisure product. I just think there might be some things that we need to think beyond kind of like the really obvious things. So, what are guests likely to do? How are they likely to travel? Do they need to stay? Can you encourage them to stay? And do they feel safe in doing so? Those things we need to add to. If you are a hotel with a lot of corporate guests, then I think there is a challenge with that. Certainly in the beginning, clearly a lot of corporates will probably have some criteria against which their staff can travel, which probably weren't there before. So there'll be a lot less discretionary travel. So instead of 4 people coming to sign a contract, it'll be 1. Instead of a group of people coming for a meeting, they'll do remote meetings. So all of those things we need to factor in. Again, looking at the segmentation within the corporates, it's identifying within your industry segmentation and your corporate segments that you have at the moment, is to look at those and say, which one of those segments is likely to travel and how quickly can I get in touch with them to make sure that when they start traveling, they're going to travel with me. So, I mean, typically, when you see hotels reopen, the typical segments that return would be the ones that have to travel. So a lot of the working community, so construction, people that work in the utilities, all of those kind of like the basically keeping the country alive, those people will travel and will need to stay still. But that typically then leans towards the sort of the 3-star, 2-star budget type, budget to mid-tier property, leaving the luxury side of life very vulnerable. I think you have to remember that the 2 market segments that are reluctant to travel will be older people and the very, very rich, all for very, very different reasons.
Okay, well that means I have a 50-50 chance of being able to travel. Oh gosh, goodness. I think there's just a couple of points I was scribbling down there, Ali. Again, going back to conversations I've had this week with hotels, and one hotelier said something to me that struck me, and he said, for the first time, we don't want people in our restaurants, in our bars necessarily. We want them to come and stay, but we want to give them room service, or we want them to be able to eat outside or use our outdoor space. And he said our focus has changed slightly of, just come, enjoy the property, but maybe eat in your room or use outside. And he said it's the first time as hoteliers we're thinking, how on earth can we get people into the hotel but then keep them out as well? And I think that really struck me as a very interesting concept of us as the hoteliers, where we're very used to saying with X amount of occupancy we can expect Y amount of footfall in our bars and restaurants, and now that's almost turning to, okay, what do we do if it's difficult to feed these people or have them, sit in our bars? How do we do that? But again, and I mentioned this on our last webinar with Julie, I think one of the things that may be an opportunity for us is, there's 10 of us that work in our office, and obviously we're just a small company with 10 people, but there's companies out there with hundreds of people now very effectively working from home. But what happens if they want to do like a, you know, they want to give up that office space, they're not going to be renting really expensive office space. We as hotels are perfectly placed to provide AV equipment, you know, food and catering, to cater for those people if they want to get together once a week or once a month or whatever for an all hands. So maybe there's an opportunity for us to rent out our meeting space in a very different way. And I just thought it was worth looking at. And I have a couple of hotels that are looking at doing that and are approaching corporates and saying, you know, come and use our meeting space once a week, once a month, or whatever, and we'll provide everything. So I think we might see a shift in that, Ali. I'm not sure, but I think it would be an interesting on that meeting side. I think it's an interesting place just to watch and see what happens.
I think, albeit though we say that people have adjusted incredibly well to working from home, and it has been phenomenal the way people have really stepped up to that. I think from a corporate perspective, there may well come a time when the presentation of that type of working from home has to look a bit better. So that element of sort of not having the dog walk in halfway through or that type of thing is kind of like, it's been okay because we're all stuck at home, but I think in the future, certainly, I think there's a huge opportunity for hotels to open up meeting space with the right type of hygiene controls in place. And I think probably they're better served to do that than, and I say this slightly off the cuff, but maybe then sort of the transient office space with the hot desking, that type of office space might have to work significantly harder to get the people back in, purely because of the concept of hot desking sounds quite unhygienic at the moment. we're all in that headspace. It's not, but it's just that I think people are in that headspace. So yeah, I think there's a huge opportunity there. So.
If I can pull you back to that kind of accommodation thing, and again, my feeling is that we have this short opportunity to try and encourage that book direct. And I think there's two trains of thought on this, Ali, and I think there's, you know, if you are staying local, then you may know the hotel that you want to go to because it's, you know, 20 miles or 50 miles away from you, and you might know them. So there could be an opportunity to try and engage with that customer directly because they're more likely to come to your website direct than they are with an OTA. But I know you mentioned a very good point when we chatted yesterday that everyone's doing everything online. So, you know, we may have lost that opportunity that, you know, people may want to browse just on booking.com or Expedia or whatever. But if we thought about it sort of very optimistically and people were coming to the website directly, there's certain, you can't just expect people to come and book. Do you have any sort of insights of what sort of, you know, building blocks we as hoteliers would need to put in place to try and capture that direct business if we have that window or of opportunity? Or do you think I'm completely wrong on that? And I'm very happy if you disagree. No, I'm not sure because nobody knows the right answer anyway.
I think I think it goes back to that sort of like building up robust databases, and then actually the extension to that is having a really good CRM system and getting hotels to invest in joining the two together. So having a straight line type of digital customer journey, I think, is somewhere where we tend to fall over, and everybody, like a customer approaching you from different touch points, tends to fall into these kind of like silos of nothingness. And certainly it may well be that from an operational perspective, it might be really difficult to service the level of phone calls or inquiries from email that were there before, because you might just not have that many people around because you just can't afford them, not because they're not there anymore. So it's I think so capturing the guest booking, but also giving a really, really good customer experience in terms of that booking process, and then also having a really good CRM system behind that, which captures the profile, doesn't duplicate it a million times around all of the different siloed systems that we have, would be phenomenal. And I'm not sure that that hotels have really taken advantage of that. I don't think that there's well, I know some hotels typically have, but I think there's an element of lack of investment in that side of the business, definitely, to actually align the revenue, marketing and booking process together. It's huge. Could we see people move away from OTAs into direct booking? you know, I'd love to say yeah, but I'm just gonna take my normal well, not normal approach, but the typical approach, which says that if you're looking at an asset that's underperformed and a hall has been closed for the last 3 months, and you have a huge channel that has delivered you between 30 to, in some cases, 85-90% of business, it's highly unlikely that that you're going to get the go ahead to shut that channel down or decrease the opportunity from that channel. I think from a management perspective, the expectation is that although we have to pay a lot for OTAs, it's a challenge to actually move away from them, given the demand that we need to try and get into the property. That said, I think that now there is this the silver lining to this cloud. I know a lot of hotels are testing that relationship with OTAs, testing the rate parity concepts, and testing their ability to actually move into a market by themselves and for themselves, given the fact that when you've got nothing and you're starting off with nothing, then if a channel pulls on you, you've still got nothing, so you've not lost anything. And that mentality, certainly if you look at the mentality of the Italian hotel market, that were absolutely appalled by their treatment of the channel environment and their requirement to cancel. It was like kicking a dog when it was down. You know, it was a really, really, really difficult, tough time for the Italian community to be first on the list, if you like. Obviously, other countries then knew what was going to happen to them at different times, and so would have been maybe slightly more prepared. But that's not to say that that what happened to hotels is what should have happened at all. So
I completely agree, and I actually put something like yesterday that, you know, again, it's something I feel very strongly about. Is sort of that power of the OTAs, and you know, not just about the commission, but you know how they handle the cancellations. You know, the kind of undercutting that they were doing, even you know before all of this. We could talk all day about the OTA practices, but I think you know if Booking have gone to the Dutch government, you know, Trivago and TripAdvisor have come out and said, you know, we've lost nearly 80% of our revenue. You know, we're making mass redundancies. You know, I think it's that, and I know it sounds really simple to say, but it's understanding that those companies are on their knees in the same way that we are, and without us, they don't have anything to sell. They don't have money. If we don't give them the inventory and give them the rates, then they don't have a business either. So I think maybe this is a time when we have an opportunity to try and realign that relationship, because I think it has been very out of kilter and out of balance for so long, you know, and I would love to see, and you know, I spoke at a conference last May, a Triptease conference, and there was a gentleman there from one of the cities in Egypt, and they said they all just got together as a city and went to booking.com and said, we're not taking this, and this. And they had no choice, and they all got their contracts renegotiated. And I have heard of certain hotel groups that have renegotiated commission on repeat stays, or you know, the more business that we give you, the more our commission comes down, so it's fair. So I think there are things that can be done. I think it's very difficult to do as a lone hotel or even as a small group.
yeah.
But I think, you know, if this was a time for us, you know, to come with that whole "we are stronger together," I think it would be great to come out as an industry and just say, look, you know, we're not happy with X, Y, and Z, and maybe call on our trade organisations to help. I suppose I'm looking at blue sky scenario of what I would like to happen and what I would like the hotels to be motivated to do. I'm not sure if it will happen, but I think it would be a good call for the business, if you know, for our industry, if it did.
No, I agree on that level. I think the opportunity is there. I just think that you're right in as much as just in the example of the OTAs not being able to deal with the level of cancellations they got, they're not going to be able to deal with individual hotels asking them for different deals. So there has to be some level of standardization, just from a business process point of view, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, it's still an opportunity.
Yeah, I just have a question there from Altaf saying, you know, lots of the hotels I know Altaf is based on in Limerick, you know, all of their hotels will be opening at the same time. What differentiates them from the others? And I suppose from my point of view, certainly Ali, I'd like your opinion, but for me, going back to that, you know, do we need to discount rate? I genuinely don't think that's all going to be about rate. I think it's going to be about the messaging that you put on your website. I think it's going to be about the rates that you put together to make it look really attractive, that you can come, have a wonderful stay, be treated very well, but obviously be able to go outside and enjoy things outside. And I think those are the things that may differentiate us. I don't know if you have any words of wisdom there.
I think if certainly, I think we can probably anticipate that people, even if they don't have to stay in their rooms, they'll probably want to stay in their rooms. Okay, so given that scenario, imagine that you're going off on holiday and you're okay to go, but maybe certain members of your family, say if you've got a husband, then they're just like a bit wary. The last thing you want to do is have loads of arguments about whether or not a hotel's got its cleansing and hygiene comments correct. I think then look at scenarios where if somebody can spend a lot of time in their room, what could you do to make that experience more fun? So what people have done, and I've seen it with my neighbours with kids, for example, I'm not suggesting everybody's going to have kids, but even so, we could do lots of things that would be fun in the room. So if you've got large rooms or large family rooms, my neighbours put a little tent in their sitting room so that their kids could play, and when they were stuck inside, it was something else for them to do. Lots of they also bought the gardens inside, so small pots that people could I don't know, just put plants in. It sounds a bit of a mad idea, but just thinking outside the box in terms of what you can bring from the hotel inside the room, and also just making sure that anything within the room that's likely to be viewed as unhygienic is just removed. So it's a question of like taking out the things that you really don't need and then putting in things which might make people feel like it's a bit more fun, and then you can market that. And a lot of that a lot of the requirements really are to start marketing now with the messaging, and also just get really creative about what you can offer to people within the hotel, so to make that a lot more fun.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And I'm very conscious of the time, it's 11:45, but I have one more question. And actually, the reason I'm hoping to get this question is it was asked quite often, was very quickly about tour operators. So I'm going to paint you a scenario in that I have one beautiful hotel and they're forecasting a really great 2021 because all of their business has moved, all those tour operators have moved from 2020 into 2021. They've held their rate and they're confident that 2021 is going to be a great year. And I really hope it is for them. My concern, well, I have two concerns. One is I think that a lot of that business may drop out, and certainly even the CEO of Marriott came out and said they're expecting a 50% wash on all tour groups next year. But the other thing is, certainly within the community of hotels that I work with, is some of the hotels are saying that tour ops are demanding a 20% drop in rate next year. And I just wondered, with your portfolio of hotels, are you seeing the same thing? Are they expecting wash? Are they expecting wash if the travellers come from a different country or a different age demographic? Or, you know, do you see tour operators pushing really hard on rate?
It depends where you are. I think tour operators internationally, where they still have a huge stronghold over the entire destination, have been trying to push on rate, definitely. So for example, if you take the Caribbean, where you have airlift from specific airlines, hopefully they'll still be flying, but they have a huge control over that area, and you don't have any opportunity you can only offer them a fixed rate. You don't have any opportunity to negotiate that much, and they're never going to go to dynamic pricing. I think if I think in one scenario, you could find that actually, even if you did offer 20% reduction in rate, if the market drops really badly and we're all racing to the bottom with the rate, we might be touching those tour operator rates anyway, which I would hate to happen. But I think as an entity, the tour operator and groups, was putting those two together, those two segments are really vulnerable. If you think about the type of people that go on holiday with, certainly with either tours or as small groups, if they're older, they're going to be more vulnerable. The ability for them to get travel insurance is slightly less. Even if you're a healthy person, but you're actually within a vulnerable medical environment, so you actually function normally, there may well be challenges in getting travel insurance, purely because people don't want to insure you if you're likely to be putting yourself in more danger. And this virus is predicted not to go away. It's going to be various iterations of this, and hopefully not as bad as this ever again, but you never know. So there's going to be less of that segment traveling, and fundamentally without having some level of flexibility of rates in the market, I think that tour operators are going to find it really, really difficult. So yeah, that's in a nutshell where I think it's going to be in terms of that segment.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's going to be quite hard. Well, I don't think it's going to be that hard to predict. I think you just have to be prepared for a huge section of that business not to be traveling next year. Although I think, certainly within property, a lot of the hotels that we're working with are just holding their 2021 rates at 2020. We just had a quick question there from Kelly that, they're saying that if they're limited to 30% occupancy, they already potentially have that amount of business on the books. Like, what do you do? And I think my response to that is, Kelly, is probably expect some wash in that 30% is not probably going to materialize, but don't dilute your rate. Hold your rate, because that dropping your rate is not going to stimulate business, and you're just going to affect your bottom line completely. If you've already got that occupancy, just think of it as unconstrained demand, and try and hold strong. Ali, it is. I did promise you 45 minutes, and we have gone slightly over. But just a couple of things. There's a lot of people on this call that joined because they knew you and were really interested in what you had to say. And obviously there's some of our customers on here as well. But for those who don't know us as a business, we have a revenue management software solution that's built after sort of 18 years, actually probably more, of doing revenue management consultancy. So we have an offer at the minute that we are giving out to new hotels, that if anyone comes on to use the system at the moment, we want to help you come out of this. So we're going to give any new hotels the system for 3 months for free. We also have a cost of sale calculator, a rate calculator, and a group displacement module, and a brand new cancellation suite of reports coming out, and they literally will be ready next week. So anyone who has the system, they will be included free of charge. But we have some of those reports that even if you don't have a revenue management system, that we can give out to you, and we're selling those at a really low price, just to try and help hotels come through this. But Ali, I just wanted to give you an opportunity just to tell everyone that maybe doesn't know your business a little bit about you, because I think what you offer to hotels is absolutely fantastic. And I think I'd like to, you've been very good giving us an hour of your time this morning, just to let everyone know a little bit more about what you do as well.
Well, thanks. I mean, certainly you gave me such a brilliant introduction. So that was marvelous. Thank you. So aside from the outsource product that you mentioned, so we do actually, we are the revenue managers for a number of hotels at any one particular time. Obviously, the majority of those are also closed. So, but so we do actually practice what we preach, which I think is important if you're going to talk about revenue management. We do have the skills in-house, obviously, to do that. But outside of that, we have a training product which is I hesitate. Well, I'm not hesitating to say it's a good fundamental solid training product for you to actually go from the real basics, like what is occupancy, right the way through to quite sophisticated in-depth look at forecasting and other lovely revenue management techniques that we use. But we are, given the scenario that we used to do most of these in the classroom, we are actually moving that online. So I'm really, really excited about that. It's going to be a blended learning environment. So half self-taught, half actual live webinars with real revenue managers that you can speak to. So yeah, that's going to be available as of sort of early July. So albeit slightly late for those people in lockdown, but really pleased to be able to get that off the ground. And we also have that accredited. So you get letters after your name if you get through the whole thing, which is marvelous. And actually, it's a really, really good broad spectrum of skills that a revenue manager needs. So it's not just revenue management, it's also technology, distribution, e-commerce, social media, how to integrate all of that, meta search, PPC campaigns, all of that into a revenue strategy, which I think fundamentally is going to become so much more important. And so hopefully putting that online makes it more accessible.
No, that's fantastic. I actually had someone say to me last week, which I took great offence at, is that revenue management is broken. And I said, absolutely disagree with that fundamentally, because I think revenue management, this is the time when revenue management as a discipline and revenue managers are actually going to shine. And I think it's this skill and the skill that you're giving people is going to help hotels, come out of this, and the real discipline of revenue management, of that strategy, understanding the numbers, and really understanding the business inside out, and being able to influence all the other departments is going to be key. So it's great that, there's some really good, like, it took me years to get my qualifications through Cornell distance learning, and it's great that you have something online with a UK company. So that's fantastic. Guys, this has all been recorded. I'm very lucky that I have a filmmaker in the family, so my daughter is going to edit it and get it up online hopefully later on today, and I will send it out to everyone, and please feel free to distribute it. Also, just to let you know, we do run these webinars every few weeks. We also have a hotel only WhatsApp group, so we have about 140 hoteliers that participate in that. So if anyone would like to join, again, just please send me your details. You'd be very welcome to that as well. Ali, thank you so much. You're an absolute star, as always. It's been a real privilege to have you on this today. So thank you so much. And thanks to everyone. We had 100 and I think 52 people register, which I think is our best webinar yet. So that's a credit to you. So thank you for that. So thanks everyone, and hope to see you all soon. Good luck with your strategy.
Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.